Okay, let's dive right into this explainer on why standard goal setting is probably failing your teams and how we can architect tiny gains instead. Welcome, leaders. If you're joining us today, you are likely searching for a sustainable way to drive really high performance, but without burning out your absolute best people. So today, we're unpacking the brilliant framework from James Clear's work on atomic habits, and we're applying it directly to professional growth for office teams. We're going to look at the exact architecture of building reliable, compounding success.
But first, I want you to think about a really painful, all too familiar reality. Why do so many massive Q1 initiatives just completely fail by Q2? I mean, we've all been there, right? You launch this massive corporate overhaul. Everyone is super hyped up in January. You set these aggressive, sky-high targets. And then by April, the energy has completely fizzled out. Your team is totally exhausted, the old habits have crept right back in, and that grand vision? Yeah, it's just sitting untouched in a shared drive somewhere. It happens because we constantly rely on dramatic, massive shifts instead of the actual real driver of change.
Well, here is the mathematical antidote to that burnout cycle. 37. The entire premise we're looking at today is that big corporate transformations don't actually come from those massive, dramatic shifts. They come from the compounding effect of hundreds of tiny, atomic decisions. And the math here is undeniable. If your team can get just 1% better each day for an entire year, you end up 37 times better by the time you're done. Just 1%. That is the true architecture of tiny gains.
To get us to that 37 times improvement, we've got a highly structured roadmap today. We'll be looking at, number 1, the myth of big goals. 2, systems over short-term goals. 3, identity-driven professional growth. 4, surviving the disappointment valley. And 5, the 4 laws in action. Let's jump straight into sections 1 and 2, the myth of big goals and systems over short-term goals. We really need to break down a fundamental flaw in how almost every single organization operates today.
Think about the real difference between a goal and a system. A goal is just an outcome. In life, that might be winning a championship. In the office, it's hitting a massive Q4 revenue target. But a system, those are your daily practice schedules, your daily management, and your operational routines. The source material argues, and quite convincingly, that leaders focus entirely too much on the fleeting, arbitrary goals. But goals are just the destination. The systems are the actual, sustainable processes that drive those results day in and day out.
Now, what's really interesting about this is it proves your lofty corporate targets mean absolutely nothing without the daily routines to support them. James Clear puts it perfectly. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Think about it. You can set the most ambitious revenue goal in your entire industry, but if your daily sales outreach system is broken, you're just going to fall to the level of that broken system.
Which brings us to a fascinating psychological shift. Let's look at Section 3, Identity-Driven Professional Growth. Because true behavior change at work isn't just about changing what your team does. It's about fundamentally changing who your team believes they are. This is the concept of identity-based habits. Real behavior change requires looking past the outcome, past the thing you want to achieve, and focusing entirely on the underlying identity. Basically, every single action you or your team takes is simply a vote for the type of professional you wish to become.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the difference between an outcome focus and an identity focus. Let's use a relatable life example. It's the exact difference between someone saying, "I want to run a marathon," versus someone saying, "I am a runner." Now apply that directly to your office. An outcome-based professional says, "I want to close 5 deals this quarter." Honestly, that's fragile. But an identity-based professional says, "I am a trusted industry advisor." Because their identity is firmly rooted in being an advisor, the habits of following up, researching client needs and providing value, they just become totally natural. They're simply acting in alignment with who they believe they are. Now, we have to address the deeply frustrating reality of actually implementing these changes. Section 4, Surviving the Disappointment Valley. Let me walk you through the typical corporate hero's journey when you launch a new system. Month 1, you start the new initiative. Everyone's doing the daily routines, spirits are high. But by month 2, you enter what is beautifully called the Valley of Disappointment. This is that crushing period where your beginners are putting in consistent daily work, but they are seeing literally 0 visible results. It feels like a total waste of time. But then, as you move into month 3, that energy is actually storing up, and by month 4, boom, you finally hit the breakthrough point. I really want to reassure every leader watching this. Habit progression is not linear. It's just not. When your team hits that plateau, that valley of disappointment, they are absolutely going to want to quit. They'll tell you the new system isn't working, but you have to remind them of this plateau of latent potential. Their effort isn't being wasted. Just because you've been working on a new team skill for a month without massive changes doesn't mean you're failing. The energy is simply being stored up for an eventual massive leap forward. It turns into an incredibly inspiring story of daily improvement if you can just hold the line.
So how do we actually do this? Let's move to Section 5 and see how this builds into a highly practical playbook you can implement with your teams right now. The 4 laws in action.
To build these great systems, we first need to understand the 4-step loop that dictates literally all human behavior. It starts with a cue, which triggers a craving, which leads to a response, which finally provides a reward. Every single habit your employees have right now, good or bad, follows this exact loop.
And that brings us to this matrix, which is essentially your master framework. These are the 4 laws of behavior change. To create a good habit for your team, you follow the positive laws. Make the cue obvious, make the craving attractive, make the response easy, and make the reward satisfying. Now, if you want to break a bad habit, like say your team constantly checking Slack or social media during deep work blocks, you just invert them. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Let's look at exactly how to apply those good habit strategies in the office.
To tackle the first law, make it obvious, we use a really brilliant strategy called habit stacking. This is the strategy of making a cue totally obvious by anchoring a brand new habit directly to an old, established one. See, you don't need to completely reinvent your team's day. You just need to find something they already do consistently and literally stack the new behavior right on top of it.
Let's see how this illustrates the 2-minute rule in an office setting. Step 1 is the established habit. Finishing checking morning emails. Everyone already does that, right? Step 2 is the new habit, immediately spending just 2 minutes praising a team member's work. By keeping the new response under 2 minutes, you make the response so unbelievably easy it's virtually impossible for your team to fail at it.
Next up, making the craving attractive. For this, you can use temptation bundling. This just means pairing an action your team needs to do with an action they want to do. For example, say you have a team that absolutely dreads tedious Friday data entry. Well, you bundle it. You tell them they can put their headphones on and listen to their favorite podcast, which they really want to do, but only while they're completing that data entry, which they need to do. It instantly makes the whole system so much more attractive.
Finally, you absolutely must make the reward satisfying. And the best way to do this in the corporate world is through immediate rewards using visual tracking. Our brains crave an immediate sense of progress to maintain momentum, especially when we're stuck in that valley of disappointment we talked about. Simply crossing days off a visual calendar on the wall or moving the sticky note across a Kanban board gives the brain this incredibly satisfying hit of dopamine that solidifies the habit. Okay, so let's bring this all together for your leadership playbook. Stop relying on those massive, exhausting overhauls. Instead, aim to get just 1% better every single day. Focus your energy on building reliable daily systems rather than obsessing over those short-term goals. Help your team shift their professional identity so they actually act like the experts they're becoming. And when things inevitably get tough, guide them through the plateau of latent potential so they can survive the valley and reach their true breakthrough. I'm going to leave you with this one provocative question as you evaluate your own leadership style. You know the architecture now. You know for a fact that systems outlast goals. So, what is the one tiny, 1% system you will build for your team tomorrow? Don't wait for the next massive Q1 initiative. Start stacking those atomic habits today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.